I used to think vacations were supposed to be a break for everyone. You know, bonding time, shared memories, maybe some mediocre hotel wine under a palm tree. Cute stuff. But my wife Laura had other ideas. It all started 2 weeks before we left, when she dropped the first red flag into our marriage's suggestion box over breakfast. She was stirring her coffee like it had personally offended her, while the kids were doing their usual morning routine, shrieking, spilling cereal, and possibly plotting a coup. "This trip," she said, not looking at me, "is going to be my vacation. I mean, you work all day and come home tired, sure, but I'm literally drowning in diapers and tantrums. I need to reset. You'll have the kids." I chuckled, thought she was half joking. Turns out she was half serious about the kids. The moment we landed at the resort, a beautiful coastal hotel with palm trees, overpriced drinks, and that permanent smell of sunscreen and regret, Laura seemed to shed her mother skin like a snakeskin. The woman transformed. Her wardrobe went from tired mom of two to influencer on a paid retreat. Flowing sundresses, oversized sunglasses, perfectly messy beach hair, all suddenly part of her daily uniform. She looked stunning, and she knew it. Meanwhile, I was chasing our toddler through the lobby with a backpack stuffed with wet wipes, snacks, and a half-eaten banana. "You okay if I go get a massage?" she asked that first afternoon, barely glancing at me as she tapped something into her phone. "I just need 2 hours to decompress." I nodded, because of course, she deserved it, right? So I took the kids to the beach. It was exactly what you'd expect. Sand in their eyes, sand in my eyes, sunscreen in places sunscreen should never go, and at least 3 near drownings, 2 of which were mine. By the time we got back to the room, covered in grit and chaos, she was lounging on the balcony with a drink in hand, scrolling through her phone like she was waiting for room service. She glanced over, smiled vaguely, and said, "Thanks, babe. You're the best." I should have known then. The next few days followed a pattern. She'd sleep in while I fed the kids breakfast and tried to keep them from setting fire to the curtains. Then she'd need space for a walk, or time alone at the spa, or, my personal favorite, a few hours at the adult-only pool. "I just need to feel like me again," she said one night while painting her nails and ignoring the fact that our youngest was having a meltdown over a broken crayon. "You know, before I was just mom." "Sure, Laura. Must be tough being adored and needed every second of the day." Some of us only dream of that kind of relevance. I wanted to be supportive, I really did. But it was hard to feel anything other than exhausted, physically, mentally, emotionally. The kids were nonstop, and I was running on caffeine and broken dreams. Meanwhile, Laura had this glow. Not just the post-spa glow, the kind of sparkle people get when they're being noticed, admired. And that's when I saw him, the bar guy, tan, muscular, late 20s maybe, shirt a little too tight, smile a little too perfect. He worked at the poolside bar, mixing drinks like he was auditioning for a cologne commercial. The first time I saw Laura talking to him, she was laughing. That kind of laugh I hadn't heard in years. The bubbly, flirty, back-of-the-throat laugh that makes people around them wonder, wait, are they together? I stood there holding a juice box in one hand and a diaper bag in the other, watching my wife flirt like she was on spring break and I was her exhausted babysitter. It was just a moment, but it stuck with me like sand in a swimsuit. Vacations are funny. You think they're about family bonding, building memories, long walks on the beach with your spouse, and then you realize you're the one building sandcastles while she's building rapport with a guy named Marco who knows how to rim a margarita glass with salt like he's performing sacred ritual. Yes, Marco. That was his name, because of course it was. He looked like someone who got lost on his way to a photo shoot for Hot Barman of the Caribbean and just decided to stick around for the free rum. Smooth tan, dimples, tribal tattoo sneaking out from under his rolled-up sleeve. His hair did that just out of the ocean thing, even when he hadn't been anywhere near water. And Laura? Oh, Laura was thriving. Every day she'd pass by the pool bar, Not like it was directly on the way to anywhere, mind you. She'd put on one of those breezy white dresses that flutters just enough to suggest, "Oops, did I drop something?" and head out like she was late for her debut in a telenovela. I started noticing patterns. She always came back from her walk with a fresh drink. The adult-only pool apparently had better lounge chairs, but somehow she never remembered their names. Her me time was suspiciously synchronized with Marco's shift schedule. One day, I took the kids to the kiddie pool, a lukewarm soup of sunscreen, inflatable toys, and the crushed dreams of a dozen fathers like me, and I saw her, from across the courtyard, behind the bar, laughing, head tilted, big smile. She did that thing she does when she's into someone, where she brushes her hair behind her ear and leans in like the conversation is a secret even from God. I watched for a few seconds. Not in a jealous rage kind of way, no, in a scientific way, like an anthropologist discovering mating rituals of the recently neglected housewife. Marco poured her a drink, something bright and fruity that probably cost the GDP of a small nation. She sipped it slowly, smiling with her eyes closed like she was drinking freedom itself. I glanced down at my hands. One was holding a chicken nugget someone handed me for no reason. The other, covered in a mysterious goo I hoped was ice cream, but deeply suspected was not. And just like that, I realized something. I wasn't on vacation. I was staff. You know those Disney dads who walk around holding everyone's backpacks while their wives take selfies and their kids scream for churros? That was me, minus the churros and with more emotional damage. That night, I brought it up. Carefully, casually, like someone tiptoeing around a minefield made of sarcasm and buried resentment. "So, you've been spending a lot of time by the bar lately, huh?" She didn't even blink. "Yeah? It's the only place with decent Wi-Fi." "Ah, yes. Of course. She's not flirting. She's just trying to check her emails while sitting 3 inches from a man whose shirt buttons are hanging on for dear life." Marco seems friendly. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "What, now I'm not allowed to talk to people?" "Jesus, Ethan, you're being paranoid." There it was, the gaslight, flickering to life like a pilot flame in Hell's Kitchenette. I let it go. I shouldn't have, but I did. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe I was paranoid. Maybe the years of sleep deprivation had finally turned me into the jealous type. But something in her voice, that brittle edge, told me I'd just brushed up against a boundary she didn't want me crossing. She was hiding something, and I was about to find out what. I didn't plan on becoming a detective on this trip. I didn't pack a trench coat. I didn't bring a magnifying glass. And the only stakeout I imagined was maybe at a surf and turf dinner. But when your wife starts acting like she's on a solo bachelorette party while you're single dadding it through Dante's 7th level of splash pad hell, you start connecting dots, badly, sleep-deprived, wearing flip-flops and a sunburn. The next morning I decided to test a theory. Laura had mentioned, very casually, that she was going to catch up on reading by the beach, and since I wasn't explicitly forbidden from being at the same beach, I loaded the kids into the stroller like a couple of overly talkative bowling balls and headed out. We took the long way around. I told myself it was for the scenic route, but honestly, I just didn't want to be obvious. That's when I saw them, her and Marco. She wasn't reading. She wasn't even pretending to read. She was sitting at the same damn bar with a fresh drink in hand, orange, suspiciously festive. And Marco was leaning across the counter, laughing at something she'd said. His hand reached across and briefly touched hers. You know that moment when your stomach drops but you haven't eaten in 5 hours because your son threw your breakfast on the floor and screamed, "Bird?" My 5-year-old tugged on my shorts. "Daddy, I have to pee." "Of course you do, son, because the universe will not allow me one uninterrupted emotional collapse." We took a detour to the bathroom, and when I came back, Laura was gone. Like smoke. Vanished. Not even a napkin left behind. Either she was a magician, or she had seen me. That night, I confronted her again, this time with a slightly more pointed tone. "You said you were reading." She looked up from her phone with the calm of a sociopath in a spa commercial. I was going to, but I ran into Marco. He gave me a drink on the house. Why are you so uptight lately? Ah, yes. The free drink defense. Classic. Nothing says respectable mother of two like accepting tropical cocktails from a chiseled stranger while your husband juggles sippy cups and existential dread. It just feels like you're not here with us. I tried to say it gently. I really did. She rolled her eyes. Actually rolled them, like I was a grumpy mall cop trying to enforce curfew. Ethan, I told you, I need this. I need to feel like myself again. Why can't you just support me? Support her. As if I hadn't been supporting everything. Financially, emotionally, physically, while she gallivanted around like a contestant on The Bachelorette Resort Edition. Still, I bit my tongue. Again. Because the kids were asleep, and because fighting on vacation is a circle of hell I wasn't quite ready to enter. But something in me had shifted. I wasn't just suspicious anymore. I was certain. And the worst part? I didn't know what was more painful. The idea that she was cheating, or the fact that she didn't even care if I noticed. They say most people remember exactly what they were doing when their heart broke. I was holding a half-full sippy cup and a used wet wipe. Classy. It had been another long day in paradise, which by this point felt more like a psychological experiment than a family vacation. The kids were finally asleep after a full hour of chaos. One wouldn't stop asking for crackers he didn't even want. The other kept yelling at the ceiling fan. Normal toddler stuff, I suppose. My nerves were shot, my back was screaming, and I smelled vaguely of SPF 50 and betrayal. Laura once again was nowhere to be found. She'd gone for a walk, which at this point translated roughly to disappear into the sun with your dignity. I didn't even ask anymore. I just sighed and loaded the kids into the double stroller like I was prepping a very fussy NASA mission. I decided to walk the long loop around the resort, the one that curved past the spa, the tennis courts, and of course the bar. I didn't plan to see her. Honestly, I thought maybe I'd catch a breeze and cool my brain down before I exploded from all the unspoken thoughts bouncing around in it like tennis balls in a dryer. But fate? Fate had other plans. As I strolled past the far end of the bar, just around the corner where the staff-only gate creaked lazily in the sea breeze, I caught a glimpse of movement. At first I thought, just another server. Or maybe someone sneaking a cigarette break. But then, I saw her. Laura, my wife, and Marco, the damn cocktail Adonis. They were standing close. Too close. I stopped in my tracks, purely out of instinct, and squinted between the cracks of the bamboo fencing like some low-budget spy. The kids kept snoring peacefully behind me, as if the universe had temporarily granted me this moment alone. Then it happened. She reached up and gently touched the collar of his shirt, smiled up at him like he'd just whispered something clever. Her fingers lingered. His hand found her waist, possessive, familiar. And then, just like that, she kissed him. Full lips, slow, controlled, like she knew exactly what she was doing. There was no hesitation, no mistake, no drunken wobble. This was intentional, and long enough to make my blood run cold. I swear I didn't even breathe. I just stood there, frozen, with that awful mix of emotions punching through my chest like a brass band. Rage, sharp and instant. Shock, like a slap with cold water. Sadness, heavy and weirdly calm, like watching a building collapse in slow motion. And something worse, humiliation. That quiet, gut-deep shame that crawls into your throat and says, "You saw this coming, and you did nothing." And then, almost by accident, I realized my phone was already in my hand. I'd been texting my brother a few minutes earlier. Still alive? Barely. Resort food is 70% ketchup. And without thinking, I thumbed the camera app and hit record. That kiss. Her hand on his neck, his hand tightening at her lower back. It's all on video. When she finally pulled away, laughing softly, her voice like sugar and guilt, I ended the recording. I didn't storm in. I didn't shout. I didn't throw the stroller like a Greek tragedy. No. I turned around, slowly, calmly, and walked back the way I came, pushing our children, the only innocent part of this mess, back to the room as the wind off the ocean tried to cool a man boiling from the inside. 20 minutes later, the door opened behind me. "Hey, babe." Her voice chirpy. Chirpy, like she'd just gotten a good deal on sandals. "How were the kids?" I didn't even look at her. My hands were already folding clothes and tucking them into suitcases with the cold efficiency of a robot programmed by divorce lawyers. "They're fine." "You're packing already?" She laughed. Laughed. "We've still got 3 days. What's the rush?" I zipped the suitcase, turned around, looked her right in the eye. She hesitated. Just a flicker. That's when she knew. She opened her mouth to say something, probably to lie, maybe to pivot, possibly to deflect, but I cut her off. I reached into my pocket, unlocked my phone, and handed it to her with the video queued up at the exact moment her lips touched his. She watched. No denial, no gaslighting, just silence. The kind of silence that fills a room with all the things that can't be unsaid. "I'm taking the kids," I said quietly. "You wanted a break? You've got one. Permanent." And I went back to folding tiny socks with shaking hands while she stood there, frozen, like a tourist caught in the path of a coming storm. She didn't try to stop me. Maybe she knew it was too late. Maybe she was still in shock. Or maybe, and this is the one that haunts me, maybe she just didn't care enough to fight. I packed like a soldier retreating under fire. Fast, focused, efficient. T-shirts, tiny shoes, bedtime plushies. I even remembered the kids' toothbrushes, which, considering the emotional battlefield I was standing in, felt like a goddamn act of heroism. Laura sat on the edge of the bed, arms folded, eyes empty. She didn't speak, not a word. Just followed me with that wide-eyed silence people use when they realize the Titanic isn't just sinking, it's already underwater. I called the airline. "Yes, I'd like to change our return flight, just for me and my 2 kids. Yes, as soon as possible." They found us a flight the next morning. Economy, back row, guaranteed to smell like feet and spilled juice. But I didn't care. Freedom has no legroom requirements. That night, I slept curled between 2 small, snoring bodies. My daughter had 1 foot in my neck, and my son muttered something about waffles in his sleep, but I slept better than I had in weeks. I woke early, packed the rest in silence. Laura was still in bed, pretending to be asleep. Or maybe she was. Hard to tell when someone's that good at acting through entire days of deception. I left a note on the dresser. "You wanted time for yourself. Now you have it." Underneath it, I placed her wedding ring. She'd taken it off a week earlier, because her fingers were swelling in the heat. Yeah, okay. We checked out. The front desk lady asked where my wife was. "Probably still enjoying her vacation," I said. "I'm taking the kids on a new one, called Reality." She laughed, politely, not realizing I wasn't joking. At the airport, the kids were wild. They wanted ice cream at 9 a.m., they fought over window seats, they dropped crayons into the seat pockets. I didn't care. I welcomed it. Because they were mine. They were real. And they were worth every second of the chaos. Mid-flight, my daughter turned to me, eyes wide and serious. "Where's Mommy?" I paused. My throat tightened. "Mommy's staying a little longer, but we're going home." She blinked, nodded. "Okay, can I have another cookie?" And that was that. No screaming, no tears, just acceptance. Kids are resilient like that. They bounce back while we adults sit around dissecting every emotional scratch like it's a dissertation on pain. It's been 3 months now. Laura tried to reach out a few times, texts, a long email, even a voicemail where she actually started crying around the 1-minute mark. I didn't answer. I didn't even listen to the whole thing. She made her choice. I made mine. I still have the video. Not because I need to show it to anyone, I won't. But because every now and then, when I start to second-guess myself, When guilt tries to sneak in disguised as nostalgia, I open it. And I remember, not just what she did, but what I saw in her eyes. Freedom, excitement, a spark she hadn't shown me in years, but not for me, never again for me. And me? I've started to live again. Just me, the kids, and a blender that always smells like Play-Doh. I bought a hammock. I learned how to make pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. And sometimes when the kids are asleep and the house is quiet, I sit outside, look at the stars, and realize the best thing I brought back from that vacation was myself.